Why is this of such concern to you, Dan? If my faith doesn't pick your pocket or break your bone, as Thomas Jefferson said,
Yeah.
why should you care what I believe?
Well, exactly. I wouldn't accept that religious people care so much about what everybody else believes. Why do they care? Why do Christians care what Muslims believe? Why do Muslims care what Christians believe? And to me, the really dangerous thing about religion, and this is not everybody, of course, it's not half, thank goodness, but it's many, and that is the one thing that I think is really dangerous in many religions is that it gives people a gold-plated excuse to stop thinking.
To stop thinking?
To stop thinking. To say, I don't have to think about that because my religion says this is right, this is wrong, it's as clear as that, it's black and white, I don't have to think about this anymore. It's just a matter of faith.
Well,
and we honor that. We say, oh, it's a matter of faith. I think we have to stop honoring people for stopping thinking. I think we have to say to people, fine, you have your faith, great. Your job then, your duty to your own faith, is to explain to those of us who do not share your faith why you're right about this. Let it be true that God told you. Let it be absolutely true. God told you this is the right way and these ways are wrong. Right. Your problem now is to explain to those of us that God didn't speak to why this is right.
But as that story I told of what happened in the Presbyterian Church in Austin when the Christians denounced the minister for allowing an atheist in the congregation, and the atheist denounced the atheist for surrendering to the superstition of the church. You can't have a real dialogue between people who say, I'm speaking for God, and people who say there is no God to speak.
Well,
can you?
I don't see why not. It seems to me that those people who have their faith, who believe so strongly in God, if they really believe strongly their God, they believe they're right, they believe that they occupy the moral high ground, they should be only too willing to sit down and put this not to the scientific test, but to the political, moral discussion test of talking about why they believe what they believe. And let's talk about, the main thing we want to talk about is what should we do? What's the moral course of action to take? And if that is to be a reasonable discussion, we have to take a few cards off the table.
Such as?
The faith card. We have to take the faith card off the table.
What do you mean take the faith card off the table? I mean, if one is a man of faith, one can't take the gene out.
Well, you know, Lucille says you're wrong. You know who Lucille is? She's a friend of mine. She's always right. I can't play that card in an argument. It's just rude of me to say, you know, Lucille says you're wrong. You say, well, who's Lucille? I say, well, friend of mine, always right. End of the discussion.
But we're confronted today by people who say they know the mind of God.
And
I think quote a scripture to reveal it.
And I think the way we should deal with them is to say, well, that's very interesting because now you've got a real problem. Since the rest of us don't know the mind of God, we can't share your direct line, so you're going to have to do the best you can in a secular discussion about what the right thing to do is. Are you up to the task of explaining to the rest of us who don't have your hotline to God why you're right? And don't just tell me that God told you. We know that. We accept that.
Suppose I'm sitting here, I'm a Muslim, and I say to you, look, book 5, verse 44 condemns apostasy and says the heretic should be put to death. And I'm telling you that this is my holy script, and I believe that is the case. What do you say to me?
I say, well, the fact that it says it in your holy text is an interesting historical fact, but it doesn't settle whether it's right. It just doesn't.
But it settles for me, speaking for the Muslim, that it's true.
Well, it is possible, of course, that many people are simply morally incapacitated for engaging in moral deliberation.
How come? You have to do it. Wouldn't you have to submit that to a scientific test of observation and verification?
If they can't hold a discussion, a reasonable, respectful political discussion about these issues without simply playing the faith card, then I guess they have to admit that they can't defend what they're saying. I think the big problem that we have is we have been too willing just to let people play the faith card, and then it just trumps everything. And it might have been all right, except it's being abused a great deal around the world today. And I think, and besides, nobody believes that. Let's face it. If somebody came up and said, look, my religion says that well, I don't have to make up a case. I'm going to take the case of apostasy you just mentioned. Mm. There are clerics in Islam right now who say, death for apostasy, that's our religion, and we should do it. And I think everybody in the world should stand up and say, don't be ridiculous. Don't be silly. That is barbaric. It is simply beyond the pale. It doesn't matter what your tradition is. This is not a tradition that should be honored.
Yeah, the church wants it. The Catholic Church once put heretics to the state.
Absolutely right, and they've learned better, haven't they?
They have learned.
And I think we should not be afraid to say to the Muslim world, "Come on, wake up. We made this mistake in the past too. We Christians, but we're not making it anymore. We Jews. That certainly Christians and Jews certainly made that mistake in the past."